Right, I have got a few people said they might not be able to make it. Martin Fryer is away and he's not on Wi-Fi. Kevin Snowden can't make it. I forget why he can't make it, but there was a reason. Chris McIntyre can't make it. Ray is okay now, he's here. And Janice has been ill, so she might not be able to make it. Let me just check and see if I've got any messages. I haven't got any messages, so nobody's saying they can't get on. So we'll carry on. So that's the people who can't make it. It was proposed that we have a book club. Any ideas on that? A book club.
Yeah, what format would it take?
Yeah, I don't know how that could work. I mean, we do discuss books at the meetings. Would we have it in the Facebook area, or would we just keep it to the meetings? Anyone suggestions?
No,
Are
it
you
depends.
Are you thinking about exchange of books or
Well, no,
physical books?
I didn't bring it up. I think that was Walter brought it up. Why didn't we have a book club? I don't really know what he meant to suggest. He just said a book club. I mean, at the meetings we always do discuss books, and if there's any new books, I always tend to put it on the Facebook page. So I think we've covered it. I mean, we always do talk about books at the. Did you all see that Australian book?
Yeah, that looks interesting.
Yeah, that does look good, doesn't it? Repatriation.
Yeah.
That looked quite good. That might be one to get hold of and have a read of, and see what we think. I did have an email. Just find it. About the narrow road of the far north. She is Australian. She isn't in the group, but she's in the Facebook. You know, Richard Flanagan. She was saying, you know, that was a good book and everything. You know, I had mixed feelings about it, and I think Ray did as well.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah,
Very mixed feelings.
Yeah, I wasn't very impressed, to be honest. I thought he misled. He just didn't like the English, did he?
Not much.
He kept on having a go at the English all the way through the book, particularly the English officers. But you know, I think there are better books than that one myself. Right, one other thing that came up. My cousin Valerie joined the Facebook group because her dad was with my dad in. They were both Norfolks, and they both went. My dad went first. He went in the June parties, and my uncle went up in October, and he joined my dad at Nunn Pladuk, and then they went to Saigon afterwards. So he was with my dad most of the time. And she sent me a report by Colonel Dillon on. I didn't know what it was at first until I started reading it, and then clicked what it was. That was F Force. That was F Force, and that was quite a good report. And so I copied it up. It took me about 6 hours, but I got it all on. So I got it all on the internet for everyone to read, and I put it in Far Eastern Heroes if you want to have a look. It's in F Force report.
Yeah, when I was at Q last week, Ronnie, there was I was just looking through some files, just generally started to look through, see what's there, because I've never really looked. I've been doing one-to-ones all the time, so I thought, right, I'm going to start digging now and doing some stuff for me, and I came across a folder that thick, all about F Force.
Yeah.
And there was another one the same thickness on H Force.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Very, very good.
If you have a look on OneDrive, I have got about 3 or 4 files on there on F Force and H Force. One thing we were talking about, and I said to you about it, Keith, that the death rate on Songkran was very high, as we all know. Yeah. And you said most of them died at Songkran. And I said to you about Thambaya in Burma.
Yeah, Thambaya.
That was the hospital for F Force.
Yep.
Now I've started to go through it actually to fill in some gaps, because I realised I started going through it and then realised that in my Thailand role, Thailand to Burma railway role, I have left out Singapore Memorial, and I didn't realise that. But that's going to be awkward to do, because you can't look up Singapore Memorial and because they're all different places and they don't tell you where they actually died. So I started going through F Force, and I've just done the A's so far. I'd done Songkran before, Songkran Camp 2. So I thought I'd go through it, and Thambaya, how you pronounce it? Thambaya.
Yeah.
That there were 17 deaths from Songkran at Thambaya. And when you look at Songkran Camp 2, there were 17 deaths there. So 34 deaths, and half of them were at Thambaya.
Thambaya, yeah.
Yeah, and after a while, they then started using the hospital of Canberra. So they started using that one. But not so many Songkran F Force died there. They died at Thambaya. So I thought, well, I'll start going through it. And Kami Songkran.
Yeah, Kami Songkran, right? Yeah.
Yeah. There weren't so many there. There was only, in A's, I've just done the A's so far, there was only about 3 or 4. But
Yeah,
the main deaths were Songkran.
I did take some photos, so what I'll do is I'll print them out.
Yeah.
And maybe if I can, I'll have a look, and if I think they're going to be of interest to you, I'll forward them to you.
Yeah. Well, I think what I'll do now is I will concentrate on F Force and H Force and try and get my list up to date. Right, just a minute. Right, you're okay, Barbara? You can hear us okay?
Yeah, I've had a few problems. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
it's the first time I've used. Yeah, it's the first time I've used the headset.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only one we can't hear is Bernard. We can't hear you still, Bernard, can we? That's great, Bernard. Yeah. No, we can't hear you, Bernard. Right. Yeah, we're just talking about Songkran and F Force, Barbara.
Okay.
So I'm going through my list again and trying to fill in, because at the moment I've just got all the deaths on the Thailand-Burma Railway, but I'm now putting it down to either Songkran. Songkran I have done, but I'm now doing Thambaya, and what I'll do is I'll go through my list and I'll start putting in actually where they did die instead of just the Thailand Burma Railway. I think that'd be interesting to sort that one out, Keith. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to take a while though, because there's 3,000 odd names. There's 3,000 odd names in this file, and I've only done page 1, so there's a lot to do. But I think that's worth doing. Yeah, so you got an okay, Barbara, because last time you couldn't get on, could you?
That's right. I hadn't had an invite from you anyway, so I was just trying to do it via Blue Jeans, which without success. But this time fine because I had an invite from you.
Yeah, you should have got one last time.
Yeah, no, I
Because
didn't receive it.
I send the same list out every time, so I've just got a pre-list that I just put in.
Yeah, just a technical glitch.
Just the email.
One of those things.
If I'd have noticed, I could have then sent you another invite, but I didn't notice till afterwards, and I started going in and noticed your email saying you couldn't get on.
Yeah.
So sorry, but
That's okay.
You're on now.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So book club, we think we're okay talking about that online, don't we?
Yep, should be okay.
Or discussing it within the Facebook.
Sorry, Keith. I just mentioned it as a thing. A lot of us.
That was Barbara mentioned it.
Yeah, I brought it up
I
sort of a bit tongue in cheek, but then people seem to think, well, maybe it's a good idea.
Yeah, that is a good idea. But do we discuss it in Facebook, or do we discuss it at our meetings? Bearing in mind that if we talk about books at our meetings, only the people who are in the charity part are going to get the message.
Yeah.
So I think maybe Facebook.
Yeah, and it may encourage more people to join too.
Yeah. Well, what I suggest is, we were talking about this before the meeting. What I suggest is when this is a new app, so the new app doesn't give me that facility, but the old app gave me the facility of putting the meeting out live on Facebook.
Okay.
But you couldn't do both. You could either put it out live on Facebook or record it. So you couldn't do both.
Right.
So what I suggest is when we all decide, or if we decide to do it, we've got to agree that we do put a meeting out on Facebook live when they sort this app out.
Right.
Either that, or we put a recording out to the Facebook so they see what the meetings are like.
Okay. Yeah, because I think there's an issue with having the confidence to come on and do the video things, because I missed a few purely because I was lacking in confidence. And yes, I'm used to doing conference calls at work, but not on video. And I think it's a great medium to be using, and to see familiar faces too.
Yeah, I think it's nice to see faces and talk to a face.
Yeah.
Because when you're talking on email or you're talking on Facebook, you're not seeing a face, and I find some people can be a bit abrasive if they don't see a face.
Yeah.
They can.
It's nice to see a reaction.
Yeah.
You get a reaction.
Yeah. So maybe when they sort this app out, and we can do it, we can put it live out on Facebook now and again if everyone agrees. We've all got to agree to it. Or we can put a meeting out on Facebook just to show people. I can always edit it, so I just edit bits out.
Yeah.
That just to push the charity side of the membership.
Yes.
Why I'm saying this, Keith, and I don't know if you'll agree with this, Keith, is that the idea of the group and I've always said I'm really chuffed you're all helping, is that now I'm retired and now money is a lot tighter. I can't no longer put the money in that I was putting in when we were at work.
That's fair enough.
So this group was formed to help me with the expenses of running the sites and everything else, and it also pays for the Blue Jeans, which we're on now, so that's a good thing. But if we had more members, we could put that money down a bit. Do you agree with that? Because, I mean, at the moment you all pay £25, but if we had, say, twice as many members or 3 times as many, we could get it down to, say, £10.
True.
What do you think, Keith?
It's whether people want to participate, to be honest, Ronnie.
Yeah.
It's going to vary from year to year as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
that is.
I suspect it would do.
So I think it's better keeping it at one price.
Yeah.
And then
At the moment, I mean, we've got the people involved in the group that really want to help and really want to communicate and be in the group. So we've got people that are dedicated. Can you understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
If we opened it, would we have that dedication as we've got now?
You're going to have the core of members the same.
Yeah.
And then it's up to the others what they want to do, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think a lot of them will find it useful to have access to people like yourself and Keith in particular, who do all the research and do it so well on everybody's behalf.
It may be, I mean, it's another charity, and you'll know which one it is, obviously, Ronnie. We've seen a surge in membership.
Yeah.
Now, when you get these membership forms come through, if there's a question, it ends up on my desk. And I often sit there thinking, are you just joining to find out information and then that's it?
Yeah.
But there's no way. You've got to help. There's no way you can just turn around and say,
we do tend to have that in the Facebook, and we used to have it in the FEPO community. You have people join, and then they'll get in touch with you and complain because they're getting emails through. When we used to have the FEPO community, I used to get people get in touch and say, "You've given me the answer. I want to stop all these emails coming through," because they were getting the emails from everybody else. So really, as you say, they're only interested in knowing about their little bit, where we tend to take it a little further. I mean, as one of the things that really got me was the Java index. I was doing the Java index for
forever,
for years and years, and then I thought, well, people, you don't hardly get people get in touch and say thank you, and my dad wasn't even there.
Yeah.
So you get to a stage and you think, well, I'm spending all this time and I'm not even doing where my dad was.
No.
Because you're doing something
Join the
for
club.
somebody else.
I'm going to laugh because Keith knows I've been saying to him, I'm going to keep nagging him to do his dad's. He owes it to his dad. Keith, you must do it. I don't see you so often now, but here you go. Here's the nag from Barbara. Get on and do your dad.
I'm going to try and look up for you. So I said I'd look up the sound locating bits and pieces that your dad was on.
Yeah, that would be
so
great.
If I find something, I'll come along to one of the Birmingham meetings.
That would be great. And that group is although we've only got one FEPO that comes regularly and another one who is very ill. The feeling is there. We want to keep that group going to commemorate the FEPO, and that's what we're about. So it's good.
On the Java index, Roddy, I'm going to have to send you a correction. Because the Java party role on one particular guy says he's in hospital. He went to hospital. He didn't go to Kuching.
He was put down as being on the roll, but they took him off and put him in hospital.
Well, he never went. That's what they say, Roddy, but he never went to hospital.
Oh.
He actually left with the party to go to Kuching.
This happened to me with when I was doing the Gunners Party.
Crowd,
600
yeah, that's
Gunners
another one,
Party. Yeah, I couldn't find 12 names. And then I did find some of them, and then that led me. Well, I found one who was in Japan, so he certainly wasn't with the Java party, with the 600 Gunners Party. And so I looked at it further and found that in one of the reports from one of the POWs who were Rabaul, they sent so many off the ship because they didn't have enough room. And so this one who was in Japan, he wrote a report back to the Wargraves, who had put him as dead, saying that he was alive, and he was taken off the boat.
This is
So
got
that
to
was-
ask some questions.
So that was
Because the
so
Gunners,
those 12 that were missing,
uh,
more than likely were taken off the boat.
Gunners
They
600,
didn't actually, yeah, so
Yeah.
they were named as going.
yeah,
but
but
they
they never
didn't
actually
go.
got there. No,
They didn't
I mean,
go.
this has actually reared its head the past couple of days because somebody asked me about it, and I was doing a lot of checking yesterday.
Yeah. Well, if
That's
you
on
have
the
a look,
spreadsheet I've got,
Yeah.
so I thought, ooh,
yeah, but if
Here
you
we
have
go.
a look at my Roll of Honor site with the
Yep.
600 Gunners, I have put loads and loads of extra bits on there now.
okay, I'll have a look.
So if you have a look at that, there's quite a few bits. The people at Rabaul, because the 600 Gunners, nobody knew what happened to them, and the Japanese said the ship had sunk, didn't they?
Yeah.
But one of the reports, the ship left Rabaul, and we just took it that went to Balali. But when you read the reports of the men left at Rabaul, the ship actually, they didn't say the ship went back, but two of the guards that were on the ship that
That's
left
right.
went back to pick
Yeah.
up gear for the party. And that was noticed that some white men were on the beach from a boat. So was it the Gunners went back to Rabaul? We just don't know, and we'll never know.
No, I think to be honest, no, they didn't. I honestly don't think they did.
So that ship that went back, did it just go back to pick up gear or pick up some of the belongings, knowing that they were dead?
May have been, or they were going to pick up the belongings to get rid of them. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that's a big question mark, because that ship, they say, went down, for argument's sake, I think the 5th of March is the date. Now, in March 1943, there was a bombing raid on Ballalay that took out 280 POWs.
Yeah.
And that's without the ones that had died of disease as well.
Because there was 400 in the mass grave, wasn't there?
Yep.
So the 280, there was about 120. But when you read the reports of the Chinese and some of the guards after the war, they said that a lot of the POWs who died were taken out to sea and buried.
Yeah.
So they were just taken out and buried at sea. So they weren't even put in a grave.
No.
So we'll never know the
No.
right answer, though.
No,
we never
no.
will.
No, I don't think we ever will.
But yeah,
Can I just ask, because I've got the 3 books that Pam Stubbs did about Java, and she's got lists of all of them. Do the records that you've got, Ronnie, do they correlate with Pam's books?
I
know the books?
To be honest, I got so into the Java index, I don't go into anything else. I was doing Q files and putting them into an index. I've got over 30,000 names in there now, and to go through them all one at a time, that's just impossible.
Yeah.
I've got about another 5 or 6 large files I had to go through to add to it, which I haven't done, because to be honest, they take so much time. You're going through a file, and you've got to go through your index and so I've got my index at the top and the file underneath, and you have to go through each one to make sure you've got it, and if you've got the details. And when you're talking about 30,000 names,
Heck of a challenge.
it gets a bit, it got to a stage where I was sitting on it a good 12 hours a day, and Keith, that just went on and on for months and years. And okay, that was a good thing to do, and I think that's helpful. It's helpful for people to look up, and
crumbs, yeah.
Particularly the Java parties. So that's what I start off with, the Java parties.
Yeah.
Getting the Java parties together and then adding them to the file, which that was Anthea Beckett, Barbara, who actually did start it off. And when I took it over, of course, Roger Mansell asked me to take it over when Anthea Beckett died, and her site was then going to be stopped. So we actually copied all the information from the site before that was stopped, and there was about 3,000 names. I think it was about 2,500 names in Anthea Beckett's site.
10:30.
So now it's up to over 30,000. But it does get to a stage, I'd never finish it in my lifetime. I'd never finish it because there's too much to do. And there's other things that I want to do. Like, as you said, Barbara, about Keith's dad. I hadn't done anything on my dad.
I challenge the two of you then to do it and show it to us.
Well, I have. You have a look at the Roll of Honour. My dad's on there. And
I don't think my dad's on it. I must do that.
Likewise with mine.
Yeah.
Well, did I put yours on, Keith?
Don't think so. Don't think I've sent you anything.
No, I might have put it on though.
No. Oh, you may have done.
What's going to happen to all of this when, as we were talking about, in our lifetimes, when our lifetimes have finished? We mustn't lose this.
This was one of the things that why the group was started, because when I was in hospital 5 or 6 years ago now, wasn't it?
Sure, yeah.
I had pleurisy, and I didn't think I was coming out, and I laid in hospital, and that's funny when you lay in hospital when things you're trying to sort out your life in your mind, and one of the things I was sorting out was all the research I'd done. All the research I'd done since the 1960s would be lost, and I thought to myself, no, you've got to do something about it. So I started talking to the group, which was then the Feeple Feeple community, and a lot of you, thankfully, said you'd help. So if anything happens to me, which I was really dead scared about, all the research would carry on, because the bank account is in Feeple Family's name, not in my name. So the money is there for everything we've got on the sites to carry on.
Yeah.
So no, that's. Let me just have a talk between yourselves, and I'll just have a look. Andrews, what's your first dad's name?
Robert Victor.
Carry on. You talk, Keith.
Yeah. But no, it's quite interesting. I mean, I was at Kew. I tend to go to Kew most Saturdays, which is why I can't be on the video meetings. And I came across something. No, I didn't actually. It was a book. I picked up a book. It was by an academic. And he was one of those that gave a talk to the Research and FIPO History Group way back. I think it's 2010, somewhere around there. And he was writing a book on Changi. And I picked up something in this book and I thought, I didn't know that. And it was to do with the Selarang incident. And this was where the Japanese expected or ordered everybody to sign a non-escape form. And the senior British officers told the Japanese couldn't do that because it's every prisoner's duty to escape. So the men were ordered not to sign. And as the story went on, they all went to Selarang, and in the end they all signed the forms and came back. It's not quite that clear cut. 4 men did sign. They were 4 men from my father's regiment, the 9th Coast. When the others all marched out to Selarang, these guys helped themselves to all the bits and pieces that were left behind, because I came across their court-martial records. I looked up one of the names yesterday, and he remained in Changi throughout the war, so whether he was under close arrest, I don't know. And this particular guy was one that actually wrote to the Imperial Japanese Army offering his services.
Yes.
Now, that letter did come back to the UK in some officers' papers. All I've got to try and do is find it.
Yeah, I thought, Keith, that they all signed under duress.
Well, these 4 signed when they were told not to.
Because my dad at the time was in Thailand, because
yes, he would have.
he'd already left.
Yeah.
So he was in Thailand, and he said they had to sign up, and they were told to sign up under duress.
Yeah.
So they did sign it, but they had to put under duress under it.
But these 4 signed it when they were asked the first time, and when they were told not to sign it, they'd already signed it and handed the form in.
Yeah.
Funny enough, going through the liberation questionnaires, because I'm following a particular project, I came across an officer, a major, who refused to sign the form regardless. Now I've got to look at that form again, because he got 2.5 years for that. He was virtually sent to Coventry. And in the end, he ended up in Manchuria, I think it was.
Yeah.
I thought, oh right, so it didn't all go as swimmingly as
No.
you tend to believe from the books.
Yeah.
But it was only just this one book I picked up. No, I only bought it on a whim, really. But it's a very good book to read, and amazing what you find.
Yeah.
I think I read recently, I'm not sure which book, that comrades would sign the forms with, so my name John Moses, I would sign it Ronnie Taylor. Does that ring true?
Yeah. I mean,
that was true. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that when they haven't actually signed.
Yeah.
They
They put a lot of silly names, didn't they?
Yeah. M. Mouse was one of the ones.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many Ned Kellys in the Australian Army, it's untrue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of sense of humour, really.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the remarks you get on some of them forms were a bit, they had a funny sense of humour, and I'd say particularly Australians. The Australians didn't care, did they?
No.
They just done what they wanted to do, full stop. But I had a look, Keith. I haven't got your dad, so
okay, I'll send you the details.
Send me the details, and I'll put it all together and put a site on. But if you have a look at mine, Barbara, my dad's, he's fortunately my dad did write a diary on the same ship home as Keith's dad, the Chitterell. And he wrote his diary on the way home. So I had my dad's diary. Although he wouldn't talk about it much, I did have his diary. So a lot of the information come from there. And to be honest, I mean, to save myself time and to make good Roll of Honour pages up for POWs, I have a list here. So my dad was in 4th Norfolks, but before he went, he was put into HQ as Bren Gunner, so he didn't go on the same ship as the 4th Norfolks. So I've got a list here of when I do a big page and I put what ships they were on, where they went to on the way there, and everything. That's all filled in, what dates they left Liverpool, what dates they arrived at Halifax, what dates they arrived at South Africa. I've got a list here, and I've got the name. So what I do is I look up the name I've already filled a full page in, and copy the details and add it to the other one. So if they're 4th Norfolks, I add it. That saves me a hell of a lot of time. Okay. That really does, because then I can put the whole list in as I go, which I never used to do. So I've been doing that.
You've mentioned Liverpool. And I was there this week and went on to the pier point and said my bit to all those who came back, as I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched the match last night. Liverpool.
Yeah.
Me and the son, we used to go to Liverpool to watch the matches.
Well, my husband's family are all from Liverpool, but it just draws us back. I love Liverpool, but I will never go and not go onto the pier head and go and stand in front of the monument.
Right by the pier head is the cavern, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so you can go to, have you ever been into the cavern?
No, because I'm a child of the Beatles' age, I don't need to. I have my own memories of the Beatles.
Oh, well, I've
seeing them in Birmingham.
I've never been in the
Jenny's
cavern.
smiling now.
Until we went there. Yeah, until we went there.
I love, there's so much to do in Liverpool, but the
nice
pier head always draws me there to go in, because I didn't know when the day that the repatriation memorial was opened, I had no idea on that day when we went there for that service that my dad had come back to Liverpool. I didn't know where he'd come back to. It was a few days later, on the 19th of October, that I got my dad's letters out, and because the paper is curling at the edges, it's curled it back, and it was the 19th of October he'd written to say he was landing on the Orduna at Liverpool, and Martin Percival's dad was on the same ship as well. And I know I've talked to Martin about it. So that repatriation memorial draws me back. And one of the things I'd like to do through the site, perhaps, is to find out how many FIPO memorials there are, because Keith, who has come to the Birmingham Association of FIPOs, knows that we have got a not overwhelmingly large amount of money, but some money that we want to use to keep these memorials going for the future. So if any of you know, and I know about the one in Camden, which is fabulous.
Yeah, we've got one in Southampton, which is repatriation ships there.
Yeah, that one there. For people to let us know, so that if we can help. Bob Hucklesby had asked us to provide a grant towards one on the Isle of Wight, but Bob has sort of stopped getting in touch with me. Pauline Simpson said she'd do it, but I haven't heard from her.
Oh, right.
But she's very busy, isn't she? And she hasn't been well. It's just these things that I think are so important. We have monuments that reflect the whole of the World War II and World War I, obviously. But I personally want there's something to be for our FIPO.
Yeah, we have got one at Great Yarmouth, which Keith has been to.
Mm-hmm.
That is, but the stupid thing is, typical Yarmouth, they stick it on the seafront, so you can't get to it unless you can park. And you know what it's like in Yarmouth in the summer, you can't park. So if you remember, Keith, we managed to get in okay, but that was raining like anything, thank goodness. So there weren't many people about. But no, we have, that one in Yarmouth is quite good, but it's really in the wrong place.
Yeah,
it's a nice memorial.
Yeah.
But it's really in the Golden Mile, which is the stupid place to put it. But when I used to go with my dad, we used to go to St George's Park, but that was the main one. You know, all the World War II and one.
Yeah. So
we used to go to that one. But they built this one, it was 1976, something like that. They built the Yarmouth one.
There's one in Peterborough, which is a memorial bench, which we are undergoing, perhaps replacing, because it hasn't stood the test of time. And that's dedicated to a specific FIPO. And if we can get to find out how we can go about it, we're hoping to replace that bench. Still keep it for that particular FIPO, but do it as a general thing to all of the FIPO, which is my own personal thing. The one that's in St Martin in the Bullring that was done by the Birmingham Association only recognises the ones who didn't come back. And I feel that as a child of a FIPO, and knowing that they came back with problems, that we need to recognise their struggles through life and the impact. Some didn't want to be involved, some came back, threw away their medals. But I think if you're a child of a FIPO, you know what your dad went through, even if you only find out after he's died, really.
Yeah, this last week I've been in touch with Herman. Now, I thought Herman's got to be a boy, but it's a woman. And she's Dutch. And we were talking about, well, I put a page for him on the Roll of Honour. And we've been communicating emails. And we got to talking about repatriation and my dad. And I was saying that my dad had problems, blah, blah, blah. And she came out with exactly the same problems. Exactly the same problems as my dad had, and that surprised her because she didn't realise other people had the same problems.
You don't realise until you talk to other children off FIPOs, though. I mean, I can remember the first time I went to the NMA for the COFIPO memorial there, and I met several others. We all gravitated. We called ourselves the Saigon Babes in the end. And when we talked about what we'd been, I was amazed. I was so emotional that day because I thought it was just my dad that screamed in the night. He had these shaking fits and, went yellow and all sorts. I did not realise it was a general thing, And
I used to call it walking the floor because he used to scream in the night and then you'd hear him walking the floor. He used to walk the floor upstairs so you could hear him walking. And many's the time, because I was at the time, when I was really young, I used to go in there because you used to go in and have a cuddle in the morning, didn't you, with your parents. So I used to go in there to have a cuddle, and he sometimes was on the floor. He used to sleep on the floor. He couldn't get used to the bed. It's very strange, really. But, but we were talking about memorials, and I'm just trying to think of his name. American, and he's tied up with the Philippines and a war memorial they were trying to set up for a hell ship, Keith.
It's not. It's Mike Hurst, Taiwan.
No, but he was helping him with it. He sent me the email. What's his name? The chap in America who's really begin with E. Can't think of his name.
I can't.
Oh dear.
I know
he's well known. He's well known. He helped me with when I was doing the special parties. He helped me with that. Let me just find it out. Annoys me if I can't. Honestly, I'm finding as I'm getting older, names. Oh dear.
Yeah.
I have so many problems with names.
Know what you mean, Fred? Know what you mean?
Yeah.
Special party. Jim Erickson.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know him. He's helping Hurst with that because he's quite involved with the ships.
It's remarkable they can actually use the term hell ship.
Yeah, you can't.
Because when they were reprinting the new brochure at the NMA, which is it's a nice brochure, I was contacted by their Peter Orgill, one of their managers, and he said, we're having a bit of a problem because the term hell ship, we can't use it in the catalogue. Yeah. So we found a way around it. So that was okay. Yeah. The term hell ship does not appear.
That's what he was on about because they wanted to find a memorial that mentioned hell ship in it because they were told they couldn't use hell ship for that ship. That was
Enora Maru.
Yeah, that's it. They were trying to put up a memorial for that ship, and they couldn't put hell ship within it because they were told they couldn't use hell ship, and so they were trying to find another memorial that mentioned hell ship to give them an example that could be used, and they couldn't find one.
FIPO building.
You just can't, can you?
In the FIPO building, one of the message boards actually says hell ships.
Yeah. Also, if you get in touch with Erickson and tell him, because he was looking for somewhere where hell ship was used.
Yeah.
I did put it on Facebook. So
I think they've got Jim
Erickson's. You got his email.
I'll find it.
Yeah.
I'll find it.
But I'd give him and tell him that is on your board.
Okay.
Because he was definitely looking for an example to tell them that it could be used.
Okay.
That's an awkward thing, isn't it? I mean, I use hell ship, but
yeah, I do
on the Roll of Honour. But that's.
I have awful things about Hellship because my father went out on the Nissa Maru to Saigon, and that journey was hell. Now the thing is, particularly at the NMA, it's only the ships that were sunk that are classified as hell ships, and I think my dad's ship. When I read, I've got all these things here of what their experiences were on that boat.
Yeah, lots
that
of
was
them.
hell.
Yeah,
that was
it's
hell.
Lots of them, even though it didn't sink.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
and
well,
I feel that those ships should be recognised as well in that memorial. Because
within the
they
Roll
were
of
treated
Honour,
worse than we treated the slaves in the back in those days, except that they weren't manacled.
Yeah, within the Roll of Honour, I use hell ships, and I've got the Singapore Maru in there.
Yep.
They weren't sunk, and the Marus Maru.
Yep,
Well,
Maros
if I
Maru.
send you my dad's details, can you put the Nissa Maru then as a hell ship for me? Because reading all the reports on
Was what ship was he on?
the Nissa Maru.
Oh, the Marus Maru I'm talking about was the one that went from Ambon back to
It was
Java.
eventually sunk, I think, unless I opened up my dad's things. But
No, well,
when he went to Saigon, it didn't sink, unfortunately.
That was the one. Yeah, that was the one where
Broke down, didn't it, for a month?
I found over 300 deaths on the Marus Maru, and I thought that was sunk until I looked into it, and they took over a month to get from Ambon back to Java because the ship had engine troubles.
And
And at first, they didn't put them below deck, they put them on deck. Although when you read about it, they say they're below deck. They didn't have any room below deck, so they put them on deck, and it was stormy weather. And you can imagine what it was like on deck.
And any man who went on those ships, it was sheer hell because they didn't know where they were going. They were frightened. It was.
Now this one, I mean, the one Ronnie's talking about, they also took on survivors from another ship.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
they no sooner took them on.
Yeah.
Than Blackwater fever hit.
Yeah.
And it just went from bad to worse. I mean, I know the report you're talking about, Ronnie. It's by Flying Officer Mason. And it was a really long, and he'll tell you which draft, whether these were the first draft or whether these were the second draft.
If you have a look, let me just find it.
What's the reason behind not being able to use the word hell ship? Is it political correctness, is it?
Yeah, basically, John, I think so.
Yeah. Nonsense.
Yeah. Prisoner doctor.
Just a minute, I can't hear you because I ain't got my things in. Just a minute.
Can't remember whether I've got that one, Ronnie, to be honest. If not, I soon will have.
That, brilliant. Is really brilliant because he was the doctor with the party.
Yeah.
And he does explain it quite well. Richard Phillips, Philps, Philps, Richard Phillips, and he was that's called prisoner doctor, and he was the doctor with that group. So he does explain it quite well about the Marus Maru. And I started looking at it, and then I realised I had his book. So I read it right the way through, and God, dear. Yeah, because the camp they had on Ambon had a lot of mosquitoes, so they're going down with malaria. So the Japs decided to take them back to Java because they were losing so many. So and when they got to Makassar, they were in the harbour because they had to get the engines repaired, and they took a long time in the harbour repairing the engines, and they were still dying on board, and they were just putting them over the side of the boat, and so they were floating around in the harbour, the dead. When you read it, it's flipping horrible.
Didn't the POWs end up repairing the engines?
Yeah, because they had some. No, they repaired the engines on the way to Makassar, the POWs.
Right.
So they got to Makassar, but when they got to Makassar, they had the engineers have a look at not the POWs. The engineers had a look at it, and they took quite a bit of time in the harbour repairing it, and the POWs weren't allowed ashore, so they're kept on the boat. The whole trip was about 5 weeks. And being on deck for a length of time in storms and everything, you can understand why they lost so many.
Yeah.
And during the week, I found, because I've got the British POW list, which is 300 odd. I found the Dutch list, which is 150. So apart from the British 300, you've got the Dutch 150. Ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that wasn't a sinking.
No,
that was
there's lots of ships that they did have a high casualty rate, and of course
the Singapore Maroon.
The trouble is, if you look at Death on the Hell ships, it's just an example, but there's a lot of the Japanese records on Hell ships where the ships just are not listed. We know the voyage took place. Like we know it was the Kenkon Maru that left Singapore with Gunner 600 party, where it was believed to be the Kenkon Maru. Okay, well, so we know that one.
I think we've got that right now, because at the time we were looking into that.
But you won't find that logged anywhere at all.
I found it, and I can't remember where I found it, but we already had it, so I didn't bother about where I found it. That did actually say that. That did actually say that was the Conquer. I can't pronounce it.
Kenkon Maru.
So we now know that was that ship. Yeah. But even Alf didn't know that, did he? Alf Baker. He didn't know what ship they went out on.
Both ships he mentions in his book. I can't find them on the Japanese log either.
But I was thinking about his book. If he was still alive and he wrote it again, he'd have a lot more information now about Belaley.
Oh yeah,
because he only just did a small chapter on Belaley because he didn't know what happened.
No.
So all they knew was they were lost. How they were lost, he didn't know. So he just put they went to Belaley because that was what people were saying. And if you notice, because I started writing it when we used to get in touch with Alf, I spelled Belaley the way he did. So I always spell it his way, because I started spelling it his way when I used to get in touch with him. So that I've stuck to that now. Yeah. Because most of you put an E on the end now, don't you?
Yeah.
I just put the I. Anyway, come on, Ray. We haven't heard from you, Ray.
Well, it's been interesting listening to that what you've just been talking about, but recently, the last few weeks, I've been reading more into the Seri Thai in Thailand and their contribution to the war effort in Thailand. Particularly, I've been interested in reading about the Office of Special Services at the Americans, who trained up some expats who happened to be in America at the time when the Japanese started to occupy Thailand, and the origins of the Seri Thai from that point onwards, and the way they infiltrated into Thailand via China. Now, at the time, the communications were so bad that the Americans didn't know whether there was any resistance movement being set up in Thailand. But there was, and on the very day that the Thai government capitulated and gave the Japanese freedom of movement, there was a chap called Priddy, who at that time was a finance minister. He held a secret meeting, and that was when the Thai version of the Free Thai movement was begun. Simultaneously, in America, a chap called Seni, he was the Thai minister in Washington. He was famously refused to hand over to the American government the Thai declaration of war in January 1942. And there's an interesting story about that, actually, which I won't go into, but he never actually handed over the declaration. And Priddy, in another rare document that I managed to find, actually argues that he never received it anyway. So that's quite interesting. anyway, these 22 guys were trained up by the Office of Secret Service, Special Services by the Americans and infiltrated into China, into Thailand via China. 2 of them were murdered by the Japanese border patrols, but other guys got through, and eventually, after long periods of time, 6 months, 9 months, and a year in some cases, they actually made contact with the Thai Free Thai movement in Bangkok and set up communications. And the role of the Free Thai movement was really not so much like other resistance movements in, let's say, France or Yugoslavia or Albania. It was more an intelligence gathering because they didn't have any arms or ammunition to fight the Japanese. But then the Special Operations Executive in the UK, they got interested, but at that time, the declaration of war was accepted by the British government. So technically, Britain was at war with Thailand, but never actually made any invasions. And it took a long while to convince the government, and particularly Churchill, to convince them that they should treat the Free Thai movement as an ally, because technically
it's 11 hours.
Sorry about that. Technically, they were at war with Thailand, but eventually, through the SOE and the OSS and some hard work by the Special Operations Executive, then a role was formed. But the British government had a different agenda to the Americans.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to pull all of this together, and particularly to try and funnel it towards Ubon, where the prisoner of war camp that I'm researching is located, and what role those guys played in Ubon. But one of the American agents, as a chap, his code name was Ken. He actually, in the books that I've got, he does state that he ended up in Ubon. And a couple of years ago, I was lucky enough to interview a lady who had been a member of parliament in Thailand, but her father was the head honcho of the Seri Thai movement in Ubon, and she remembers Ken. And she told me about Ken before I even read it in the book. So that was great to sort of tie up those two pieces. And he lived there for a few weeks with a radio set in the attic, sending messages on troop movements and Japanese battle orders, etc., back to Bangkok, which were then relayed back to headquarters, so that the Americans knew what was going on. So that's where I've been in this last couple of weeks, trying to pull all of that together.
Yeah, we were talking about WO3612172.
Yeah.
We've been talking about that, and that's a full list of the work groups and everything for Thailand. There's about 15,000 names in it. And I started going through it because I thought if I could use that as the roll of honour, in the roll of honour, I could list Group 1, Group 2, Group 3 and Group 4 with the names. But when I started going through it and looking up the liberation forms, most of them, well, all of them that I could find, stayed in Thailand. So that 15,000 didn't go back to Singapore. Did you find this, Keith?
Yeah. Well, they wouldn't have gone back to Singapore.
No, the Q file said that they were POWs in Thailand. That didn't say they stayed in Thailand.
And I think it was at a certain date, wasn't it? The files at 2172. I can look it up. I've got it around here somewhere.
Yeah.
It's all at a certain date.
But this gets back to. I'll let you look that up. This gets back to Ray, and so I did find quite a few. Ubon. I did find quite a few Ubon files, but But I checked on your database, which you gave me to put in the roll of honour, and you've listed them all at any rate. So, but I did find quite a few looking up these names to see, because I thought I could use that, Keith. I thought, well, I can use that and I could list work group 1, which threw me was my dad wasn't mentioned, because he was in work group 1,
right,
and he wasn't mentioned because he didn't stay in Thailand. He went to Saigon.
Well, from my penciled notes here, and I'll have to look it up when I go to Q again, 2172 was the nominal rolls at the 1st of November 1944. So if it doesn't mention your dad, that can't be right, because your dad didn't go to Saigon until 45.
Yeah, but he went back to Singapore.
Yes, then that would be.
So he
then
went back to
then
Singapore.
that would be right, because
Yeah.
they moved back to Singapore from the June to the September.
I think he went back on September. I think that was September he went back to Singapore. So he wouldn't have been listed
I
then.
can actually find the train he was on.
Yeah.
If
So
you haven't got that.
but that list includes all the dead as well. So that includes everyone who stayed in Thailand, even if they were dead. So that list is a complete list of those who went to Thailand but didn't go back to Singapore.
Yeah.
So that's quite a good list, but 15,000 names. I thought, well, I'll start doing it, but no, I'll concentrate on F Force.
Ronnie, remember the old saying, you can't take a joke, you shouldn't have joined.
No.
No, it is, it does. I mean, it's quite interesting. Do you remember we had this guy looking for some friends in a Thai civilian internment camp? John, I think his name was. And I managed to find it.
Sorry, Keith, do you mean an internment camp with foreigners in, not Thai?
Yeah, no, with foreigners in.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in actual fact, it was in a wing of the University of Moral and Political Science in Bangkok.
Yeah.
We
Thai guards and Thai officers.
Yeah, we got it down to Bangkok, didn't we?
And interestingly enough as well, the Thais also held there, according to the report that I read a couple of weeks ago, any Allied airmen that were shot down. They didn't hand them over to the Japanese.
Yeah. I've uncovered some of those stories, Keith, in my readings.
No, I must admit, I was completely ignorant about it. It wasn't until I looked up, they had a file at Kew, and it's camps in Thailand, was it WO224/200?
What was that?
WO224/200.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of that, because what happened...
Sorry, Ray, sorry. 186 as well. 186 is Bangkok.
Right.
What about the Indian camp? Do we know anything about that? Because there was an Indian camp near Bangkok, wasn't there?
Not that I've found in the files at the moment.
What's that, Ronnie? An Indian camp? You mean?
Yeah, just Indians.
Within?
Yeah.
Never heard of that
I
one.
read somewhere there was an Indian camp near Bangkok. But I haven't come across anything, of course, that isn't in Kew.
No, I've come across nothing at all.
Yeah.
No, I've not.
That would be interesting to find something out about that, because I do get quite a few Indians get in touch and they think you've got all the information. They say, can you send me a picture of my dad because he was in so and so?
This is the very big problem.
They think you've got all the information.
Well, I spoke to a friend of mine because I said, look, one of the things that on the projected on the wall at the NMA, you've not got men from the volunteer regiments, like Hong Kong's Volunteer Defence Force. You've got most of the MVG, but there's still some missing. You've got no British Indian Army, other ranks.
Yeah.
Speaking of a friend of mine as a medal collector at Kew, he said, I was in touch years ago, he said, with a brigadier at the time in the British Army. He was over in India and he could pull rank, and he was trying to find those files for the British Indian Army, not the ones that went over to the Japanese or went into the Indian National Army, those that stayed with the British Indian Army. And evidently after the war, they got all the records and it was coming up to independence. They said, right, I want these now. They stuck them in the warehouse on a concrete floor. And when they went to look at them, they'd rotted from the base up. So The only thing I can try and do, look for the Indians, is British Library.
Yeah.
But a lot ended up on Rabaul.
But if you do find anything out about that,
I
that
will
would
let
be
you know.
handy. Yeah, that's supposed to be a camp. Looking at the map, it's to the east of Bangkok. So looking at the map, it's to the east of Bangkok, and there's supposed to be.
How far east?
Well, about an inch on the map. Oh dear! What a silly question to ask me.
No, not really. Because
No,
there was a lot.
really.
There was lots of camps.
Looking how many.
There was lots of camps. Hold on. Let me see if I can get a map up.
No, but that would be handy if we do find that, because so if you come across it as well, Ray, it's supposed to be to the east of Bangkok. And there's supposed to be a big Indian camp, and there was supposed to be a lot of deaths there because they didn't go over to the Japs, they were treated really bad.
Yep, okay, keep my eyes open for
So
that.
if you do come across anything, I'd be interested.
Yeah. I mean, I think...
Keith has got his map out. That's to the east.
While Keith is looking at that, I sent you an email, Ronnie, about this other camp that I'd found in at a place called Bu Yai, which is actually east of Bangkok, near a place called Korat.
That's an airbase, isn't it? Korat, or was?
Yeah. It's actually, just to confuse things, it's now called Nakhon Ratchasima.
Great.
Which is typical Thai, isn't it? But this camp at Bu Yai, it's quite a long way from the railway, and it's quite a long way from Ubon. But in this, it's in HS1/59. It does mention this camp, but I don't know. It doesn't say how many prisoners were there. And
is this the camp we might be talking about then? Because this one's
possibly
definitely to the east of Bangkok.
Yeah.
And there's supposed to be a big camp for the Indians.
Yeah, possibly. It's got a map reference and everything like that. I've been on Google Earth and tried to, sort of have a look round, but nothing else.
That's interesting because the HS files are Secret Service.
Yeah, well, that's where I've been digging. Yeah.
Right, Jenny. We haven't heard anything from Jenny. You're being quiet again, Jenny.
I know. I've been going through my grandfather's casualty record this month, and I've got a few questions, if that's okay.
Yep.
One of the things we said about was, he says in his liberation questionnaire that he was captured at Palau Tekong. Would they have had a hospital on that island when it was just off Singapore? The reason I ask is it says in his record that he was admitted to hospital on the 14th of December 41 and discharged on the 20th of December 42, which also is the time he was transferred up to POW Camp 1 in the November 42, and on his record it does say for recoup only, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, Tekong Island.
Because I was wondering...
Yeah, there was...
That's where he was captured.
Yeah. Yes,
the problem is...
Gun batteries on there, definitely.
Yeah, the problem is, Keith...
I just wondered if there would have been a hospital there.
But most camps did have doctors within them. And so, although that might be mentioned a hospital, that might be just a small affair.
I just wondered.
I wonder, Jenny, whether he would have been sent down to Singapore.
Well, that's what I wasn't sure, and I wondered if there was somewhere I could maybe try and find hospital records. With it being for like 53 weeks, I thought it was a fair length of time.
Martin had certain records, didn't he, Keith?
Yes.
Martin
he was talking about Chung Kai, wasn't he? There's hospital records for Chung Kai in 367. Chung Kai, Nokkam Patom, and they say as well Ubon.
Yeah. So
But,
we're talking about Thai camps.
but we're talking Thai camps, and this one's we're looking at Singapore.
Yeah.
I'd have to look in the Royal Artillery history to see what I can find that was on that island.
Okay, that would be great. And the other thing it talks about is it says handbook sent 13th of June 1944. Does anybody know what the handbook would be, what it would contain, or where it would be sent?
Can you repeat that? Was that broke up a bit?
It just says it says handbook sent 13th of June 44.
Oh.
So I just wondered what the handbook would be, what it would contain, and where it would be sent.
The date doesn't. Whereabouts was he then? Now it's still there. What camp was he in?
No,
then?
I think. Get his liberation questionnaire, I think, tells me. To June 44, non-Paddock number 2.
No, certainly a hospital there. Big one.
So why would a handbook be
It was
sent?
just the fact it just said handbook, and I thought, strange.
Yeah. Got me on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep seeing if I can find something somewhere.
Yeah.
That was just well, that's where I spent most of my time the last week, sort of writing up a few more pages, stuff. So
I mean, the only handbooks there would have been, Keith, would have been the registrations for the names of the camps or hospital, because they weren't allowed anything else, were they?
No, they weren't.
So it's got to be either registration for the camp or hospital records.
And that
That's
says
the only thing I can think of.
the handbook sent. Is that sent on his questionnaire, or is that in his army record?
it's in his casualty card.
Yeah, 13th of June 44, Keith.
I can send you a copy of it, just like you see.
Yeah, can you?
Yeah.
Can you send me one as well?
Interesting to see
And
that.
then, yeah, and then I'll.
No problem.
I'll if I can. The thing is, somebody will ask you something, and you come across it, don't you, Keith? You come across it sometimes quite accidentally.
Most of the time, quite accidentally.
Yeah. And you think, oh, somebody asked me that. And then you can't remember who asked you it. My memory's getting terrible. Honestly.
It's not just old age.
Yeah. Right. Can Bernard?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear us now? Oh, we can hear you, Bernard.
My tablet.
No, you're breaking up a lot, Bernard.
I'm on my tablet, Ron.
Yeah, that's better. Hear you better then. Can't see you, but I can hear you.
But you can't see me.
No, just a minute. I'll just see if you got you.
Yes, it's on, Ron.
Yeah, but you can't. I can't see you. Can anyone see Bernard?
No, can hear him. Can't see him.
No, we can't. We can't see you, Bernard, but we can hear you. So we know you're there.
There you go.
Ah!
See all of you.
Oh, Bernard! Wow. Who's that? No, we can't see Bernard, but we've got a handsome bloke on the screen.
I had to get up to answer the front door because I
Oh,
was able to come in. We got so much snow here, Ron, and of course I was able to clear it myself. And the neighbour has just come in now and asked could they do it for me.
oh, so you're having someone dig you out?
We've had about 20 inches.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that's been quite thick, hasn't it? Right. Bernard. Oh, John, we were talking before the meeting. Have you got anything, John?
Only if I go back to what Keith said earlier on about finding F Force files and H Force, did you come across any large folders for D Force?
D-Force?
Not at the moment, no.
Yeah, I think you have got to. Well, there is in the Q Records I don't know if I put them on. I'll have a look, John.
Yeah, I think there was a D-Force.
Let me write that down.
Yeah,
So I don't forget.
Dad went up the line in D-Force. I got all his details on the train and the details of the date that they went. I think it was June.
Yeah, that was
he went
44, wasn't it?
43.
No,
43, March 43.
Early
Yeah.
1943.
Or March 43.
March
yeah,
43.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he was in train 6 or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds
I
familiar.
remember that.
But of course,
I'll look up
they
and see
some
if I can
of
find it.
D-Force then was split between the various work groups, wasn't it?
Yes, he ended up in Chiang Mai.
Ah, right. It's on it's going up.
So
Yes, I
I
know where it
don't know whether he worked on any of these, like the Hellfire Pass or anything like that, or whether he went straight up to Chiang Mai, because he would have been in the workshops there. I think he was in the RAOC. He was a driver.
What was going on at Chiang Mai?
Workshops, I think. The Japanese trucks. They were working on the repairing the
It was a truck depot.
Yeah.
Trucks for the railway?
No, trucks for the Japanese army.
Lorries, if you like.
Lorries.
Lorries.
Right.
Yeah. Heavy vehicles.
That's very far north in Thailand.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
300 miles north of Bangkok.
He finally got back to Cooley or Takli,
Mm.
and he came back on the Chitral with both your dads there.
Where did he go before Chiang Mai, or don't we know?
No, he was Thompson Road. Then he went to a camp in Thompson Road in Singapore. Then up to on the train at D-Force, and then the next part is Lampang, if I think, as well.
Yeah, Lampang is just south of Chiang Mai.
Right. Okay. So he went D-Force, Chiang Mai, and then Lampang and Takli, I think.
And at Lampang they built an airstrip.
Yes.
Yeah, another one.
Yeah. Another one. I don't know whether he worked at Takuri or whether it was just the holding camp for the liberation. Would that be right? Or would he have worked there as well?
Depends what time he went there.
Yeah.
That's the problem. But no, most of them I think that came in there because it was they'd completed the airdrome or the airfield, and the RAF used it. The Japanese never used it, and the RAF were using it to fly men to Rangoon. So he may well have gone from Chiang Mai down there because that would have been the nearest airfield.
Yeah. So there's that part from D-Force at the Chiang Mai, which is the missing link.
Yeah.
It's like your 1,000-piece jigsaw, isn't it? I've only got 500 pieces at the moment.
Sounds like his detachment was not unusually put on the railway. At least that's the way it sounds.
Yes. You could have missed that and gone straight up. I don't know.
I'm trying to think who was it. There were a couple of truck depots on the railway because it was under the command of an American. The captain, I think it was a Captain Noble. He was a member of the Flying Tigers. He had been shot down. And the Japanese didn't execute him, but they decided to use him. And I've got it somewhere. Because I asked Terry about, do you know where this camp was? Terry at the TBRC. Said, oh yeah, it was this Group Captain Noble, I think it was, or whatever is called Captain Noble. And I've come across him again in liberation questionnaires. And
I had some information from Andrew Snow way back, and all he sent me was he confirmed where Chiang Mai, the dates that he was in Chiang Mai, but all he sent me was a story about one of the Thai people who helped the prisoners there, but nothing about what happened in the camp life, if you like.
I'll have a look, see what I've got.
Yeah, that's all I got really.
Yeah, we did talk about the escapes, didn't we?
Yes, we did. They were on his questionnaire. There was he witnessed or was in the camp where there was escapes. 5 got away, 4 were shot, and 1 was injured. He was in the Royal Indian Army Ordnance Corps.
Yeah, field ambulance. Field Ambulance, Remy,
Yeah.
Border Regiment, Argyles,
Yes.
and the Royal Indian
Army
AOC.
Ordnance. Yeah, Army
Yeah.
Ordnance Corps.
Yeah. So
No,
he was shot in the arm but survived.
He came back. Yes, he survived. Came back, and he was stayed in, and he was promoted to major, I think, and awarded the MBE. Last time I looked at that was about he was from my memory serves me, it was about 1948 when he was promoted. So he was a lucky one there.
But your dad was a driver, wasn't he?
He was a driver.
Yeah. So maybe supplies. That's why he might have gone there for supplies.
Yeah, they used the our boys for driving as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Was there quite a lot of Japanese offensive in the north of Thailand going towards Burma? And that's why they probably had camps up there to keep the supply lines going.
Mm. Yeah.
I think
I did add Chitral, so you have got Chitral on there now.
Yes, we got that. Yeah.
I've added that. So so you got Chitral on your dad's. Right.
Yeah.
Right. As 11:25. Have we got anything else we want to talk about?
Can I suggest a couple of things for future meetings?
Yeah, go on in.
Very brief things, but things that have cropped up while I've been doing work to find dates that I put onto our news sheet that Keith knows about. And what I came across was that there were other surrenders other than that signed on the Missouri. Because we tend to celebrate the 2nd of September when the Missouri was used for the official Japanese surrender, as I thought. But I've seen about other surrenders that were signed, and I just wondered if anybody was aware of those, and also the different dates on which prison camps were liberated. There's quite a lot of variation as to when they were actually liberated, and I know this perhaps isn't as specific as some of the work that you do, but I think it's of interest to people.
The trouble is that as far as I can gather with lists is that the Japanese didn't accept the surrender at the beginning, so that's why the official surrender is the 2nd of September, because from the 15th of August on, the Japanese didn't think they had surrendered. A lot of the Jap camps didn't think they'd surrendered, so they wouldn't accept it.
I just thought it might be an interesting topic to discuss and then perhaps draw more people in. So and the other thing, that I thought you were going to perhaps discuss today was the war crimes, where a lot of the Japanese were sort of got away with it, if you like, because they swapped research. And I read a very interesting book called War Crimes in Japan-Occupied Indonesia, which is described as a case of murder by medicine. And that is absolutely fascinating. If you were going to do perhaps a session on although it's not the FIPO thing particularly, it's after the war, it's the war crimes trials that did take place, and how some of the Japanese were very lucky to get away with some of what they'd done in exchange for the results of research into perhaps tetanus and the vaccinations to prevent that, which the Americans were very interested in obtaining. Just as perhaps a diverse subject for discussion.
Yeah, well, I've made a note of them. There's 3: war crimes, surrenders, and camp liberation.
Yeah, if that's of interest,
I'll add them next meeting.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
So I'll add them next meeting. Yeah, there's something I was going to say then. Yeah.
Ronnie, are you getting a coach party together for this screening of 731 in Vancouver?
Yeah.
Yes, please. Got my water wings.
Yeah.
Sounds very interesting. Maybe they could do something online, so we could pay per view or something like that. I don't know. Technology nowadays, we must be able to see it somehow.
Well, if we can use that to get our meetings on, I'm sure they could do something. Yeah. Right. So 3 things we can bring up next meeting. Okay. There's something I was going to say to you, Barbara, but I forgot what it was. No,
I hope I'm okay coming on to this, because my research is very, very basic compared to all of you, and I just sit and listen to you all in absolute awe of the work that you have achieved and that is in progress. But I am interested, and it's
Keith will find the same thing. I mean, when you're looking up dates and you come across the file that says so and so was liberated, they're always liberated on the 2nd of the 9th, which is the 2nd of September in 1945. And that's really mainly because that was the main date, the surrender in Japan. But when you look at the Philippines, Singapore, when you look at Java, they all had their own
different
surrenders.
It's 11:30.
But what I've read, and the same as you, Keith, is that most of the Japanese wouldn't accept the surrender on the 15th. They thought that was American propaganda, and they wouldn't accept it. So the 2nd of September is really the date, although most of the Feebles, when they used to have the Feebles in the Feeble community, they all accepted it as the 15th of August.
Yeah.
But officially it is the 15th of August, but that wasn't accepted till the second.
Well, they a lot of the camps, they had to, sometimes if the Japanese were lucky, they got a radio in, they could hear the Emperor broadcasting it.
Yeah.
So
you still see after the 15th of August, the POWs dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they were still dying after that date.
Yeah.
With no help. So, yeah, that's a bit of a tricky one, isn't it?
Well, some of them were dying after the surrender date, because especially on the Magui Road.
Yeah.
It was just something that I found interesting, that, when you look and you think, 2nd of September was signed, but the 15th was official. And you realise the variation in dates, that these prisoners actually heard that they were free and were able to leave those camps. And I thought other people might find it interesting to hear about.
Before my dad was liberated, because, I mean, your dad was in Saigon, mine went after your dad, so mine ended the war in Saigon.
Yeah.
And he told me they went out of their camp when they knew the war was ended. The Japs tended to fade away. They didn't want to know they faded away. So they used to walk into Saigon. And he said him and his mate found a family that they used to go and visit in Saigon and have food with them. And then on the way there one day, they came across some fallen Vietnamese that had sharpened bamboo canes and were attacking families, French families.
Yeah.
And they weren't allowed out of camp after that.
Ernie Goff, who Keith may remember, little Ernie Goff, who was also in Saigon. He was going to go out one night because he wanted some female company, and he managed to get a pair of shorts and a top. And he was told, "Don't go out of the camp; you'll be shot as being a Frenchman," because as soon as the war was over, then the Vietnamese, quite rightly, wanted to take back their own.
They were promised it by the Japs.
Same with Indonesia.
Yeah, a lot of them were promised it by the Japs, and after the war we
Yeah.
had to get out. But
Yeah.
Dan said that they were attacking families, not with guns, with sharpened bamboo canes. And he didn't like what was going on, and they were told to stay out of it.
Yeah.
And so he wouldn't go out anymore. He said he wouldn't go out.
They were
So he
told to
stayed in
stay
camp.
because it was too dangerous for them to go out in case they were mistaken for being French.
Yeah.
And I mean, in
But,
Indonesia, I think it it became President Sukarno. There were lots of trouble there for any prisoners over there, weren't there too?
The Dutch prisoners at Toubon didn't leave the camp until about 4 or 5 months after the liberation, because most of them were Dutch from Indonesia, and it was all kicking off in Indonesia. In fact, a lot of the prisoners were retrained using Japanese armory in other camps. I think there's about 3 camps in Thailand that trained a lot of Dutch prisoners, and then they were shipped out to Indonesia to help calm the situation a bit later on.
And that brings you on to the Hiroshima, who a lot of them in Thailand didn't even make it home because there was no transport home. So they actually had to make a new life for themselves wherever they ended up.
Yeah,
so
the situation for the Ramusha was awful.
They didn't even see their families again.
No, in the book that I've got, the War Crimes one, it describes the treatment of them and probably the Chinese as well as being the equivalent of another Holocaust that isn't recognised. We recognise the one in Europe, but we don't know.
That's what I was going to mention to you. No, it's gone again.
Conference is today.
Talk again and I'll remember it.
I'm tired. Yeah, I've been on the floor again.
I think somebody.
Anyway, I'll remember it for next time. But anyway, it's been a great meeting. I think we've covered a lot today.
Yeah.
We have covered a lot. I'll put those 3 things down for our next meeting. So we've got war crimes, surrenders, which we have gone on a bit today, but we might be able to make it a little bigger, and then we've got camps liberation, which we have talked about today.
It may attract other people to come in and learn about their own FIPO's.
It might be useful to put it as an agenda on Facebook, Ronnie, and then.
Yeah, I think I will. I think I will, and we'll also put a book club, and we'll talk about. We'll talk about books. So I'll put a little bit on Facebook on FIPO Family.
I think we'd need to think about how you run a book club because I mean I can see behind you, Ronnie, all those books. I only have a few books. It's whether people would manage to do it or whether we just choose a book and a person takes that book on and does a sort of talk to see whether people because I don't think everybody's going to be able to obtain the books and read them.
Yeah, you can actually get library books now via the internet to put on your computer. So it's somebody you might be able to obtain them that way. But if you remember, Keith, we did set up a book club. I did, but I never got off the ground. Anyone who had second FIPO books, we'd put in a book club, which we started on FIPO Community, and I set up all the database and everything for it so that would work, and it never really got off the ground. So, but I think talking about books is a different kettle of fish. I mean, if we have a book club and we say, like today, we could say, let's talk about a certain book next time, and then see if you can get it on a library via the internet, or if you've already got the book, we could talk about it.
Yeah.
Can we give that some thought?
Yeah.
All of us, how we could do it. I mean, if any of you want to, and any of you don't pick an obscure book. I mean, we have actually mentioned the food books. That the books that side are all FIPO. So I have got quite a few. You know, I've been collecting them since about 1960s, so I have got quite a few there. I mean, my favourite book, as you all know, is The Railway of Death, or
John Coast.
Yeah, John Coast. That's my favourite book. I have got 3 copies. I found them during the week. I got 3 copies of it, and I gave one away, so I would have had 4. But it is my favourite book.
I think Ronnie, it's pretty obvious, but if somebody is looking for a book and can't find it, or it's online and it's costing 60, 70, 80, £200, you know, it's obviously very expensive. But it might be lurking in somebody's library somewhere, you know, that to sort of put a note on Facebook or something to try and locate something.
So I could put a message on Facebook, book review or book club, for anyone who's got excess books who want a book, please add underneath. Yeah, might be an idea.
Yeah.
Might generate some, and then I could put at the bottom, you know, our video meetings do discuss books. Yeah.
Yep.
Sounds good.
The thing is with our video meetings, as you know, we can only have up to 50 at a meeting. We never get more than 10. But the video, a lot of the members do say, who don't come to the meetings, that they do like watching the videos later. So it isn't that that's only us today. Other members do look at them. Okay, and what I'll do is, when we're all made up an agreement about it, I'll get a meeting which was quite successful, or I can do it on a few meetings and just take bits out of the meeting and add them together, so people can see what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of bits there today which people would be interested in. So that, yeah, for the future, we have got a few things we can do.
Okay.
But I used to send out an agenda, and I think what I'll do is I'll add an agenda. So if people come up with things they want discussing, I'll add it in an agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
Right. So we can look up what we want to talk about. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Feeble prayer. Come on, who's going to read it? Keith?
I've read the last one.
Oh.
No, I'll do it if you like. Got it here.
Or Barbara?
Do you know what? You've stunned me, and I don't know. I can think of it straight off the top of my head.
I said it last time, Ron. I've got it, you know it.
Okay. I think it's when you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today.
No, that's the Cohiba epitaph.
Okay, sorry.
Right, that's all right.
And I can't think of the other one. Sorry, you've stunned me.
And we that are left grow old with the years,
yeah.
Remembering the heartache, the pain and the tears, hoping and praying that never again man will sink to such sorrow and shame. The price that was paid we will always remember, every day, every month, not just in November.
Right, thanks, Keith.
Okay,
thanks, Keith. Thank you all for the great meeting. I've enjoyed it. I hope you all have.
Yep.
We've got to keep these up because they're so good and they get us to meet people. I mean, I haven't been out all week.
Likewise.
And so to me, this is meeting somebody. I'll stop the record now. Okay, I'll stop the record.